wanted to do is do a quick, have you both introduce yourselves and just kind of talk about your background in real estate, what you've been up to lately, things like that, so we can start getting kicked off. And then I've got questions that mostly take us through, minor, just the beginning, during, and the future. So just a very small, not intimidating set of questions about the skills that you gained during your move to real estate, things that you brought in, and kind of where you see yourself going in the future. But this can be pretty loose and informal as well, just things to kind of guide. So whoever wants to start off, you can go ahead
Well, the
and
guy with the bigger
yeah.
smile starts first.
There we go. The one that, we'll call it a day. So, hello everybody. I'm Feras Moussa, one of the managing partners of Disrupt Equity. Disrupt Equity, what we started doing really was initially identifying apartments to buy, sourcing them, putting the deal together, acquiring them, and then we used to use third-party management. About 4 years ago, we created our management company called Emerged Living, which does first and third-party management. And really today, between Disrupt and Emerge, it's about 240 people focused on kind of operations both through Texas and Georgia. So that's maybe the 1,000-foot view. And maybe actually, I'll say two more things. My background in software, used to work at Microsoft, came up from kind of that tech world, and happy to speak to that. And I guess an interesting thing about me, because I'm going to make Al say the same thing. Let's see, I recently got my pilot's license. So, love flying airplanes. It's been kind of a fun thing to do. So.
Nice. Very cool.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Hi, everyone. My name is Ala or Al Salous. Um, Similar journey, a little bit later on. I started in 2021. Single family first. It took me 3 houses to say, nope, we're moving to commercial. Um, Similar thing, apartment acquisitions first, and then turned into now development focus in multifamily, senior housing, flex space, and most recently, we're working on a medical office as well. Um, so about 1,500 doors, a million square foot of assets under management, and growing in that space. I love development, kind of shifting into development, but acquisition and management of existing real estate is always great. Honored to have Feras with us today. We actually partnered on 2 deals and
Yeah.
working always on the next ones, and been a great relationship with Feras. And then asked him, and he said, "Of course, let's do it." In terms of background, a little similar but different. I was always the intersection of high tech and low tech, so bringing high tech technology to oil and gas. I don't want to offend anyone, but dinosaur oil and gas. And it was fun, whether it's software, AI, sensors, or even business models and how to do business differently. Enjoyed that, and now into real estate full time. So here we go.
Great. Perfect. So we're gonna start with the beginning. What I'm curious about from both of you is if there was an inciting moment that made you say, okay, I'm gonna make the jump into real estate. This is what I want to do. And also, when you were making that plan and made that decision, were there certain skills that you thought, oh, I'm definitely going to be using these things that I learned about and worked on in the corporate world to transition into real estate?
All right, maybe here I'll go first. So, because Al kind of said the secret of the word, which is kind of high tech, low tech, right? And so for me, after Microsoft, I had a software company, and coincidentally, we were building property management software. Whenever I left Microsoft, it was really with a thesis of, hey, let's go apply tech principles, concepts into old industries like real estate, right? Talking about a dinosaur. And that's really kind of the vision. So, I mean, initially it was building property management software, started building up a portfolio of rentals, right? And then realized, A, I enjoy that a lot. And then B, it didn't scale. So that's kind of where I learned about apartments and made that shift. But ultimately, we've been successful as a company because we've done things a lot more modern than most of our competitors, right? We were the first ones to kind of really do some of the things that in tech is very normal that in real estate was not. And that was kind of the secret sauce, and that's really doubles down. And we constantly ask ourselves, how do we differentiate ourselves and stand out and have something to kind of showcase to our investors, to our partners, right? As to, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to evolve and keep pushing the needle forward.
I wonder where disrupt came from.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The name Disrupt, it's kind of a tech spin. I just remember, one night, what's coming up, I think on 7 or 8 years now, just sitting down and trying to think of company names. And I knew I wanted something more tech oriented, and Disrupt was kind of something that crossed my mind, and checked it was available. And I'm like, all right, perfect. So,
What was the trigger though? Like when did you decide to leave Microsoft, I guess?
oh, I left Microsoft maybe 5 years before I got into tech,
Okay.
before I got into real estate. And so
Mm.
for me, Microsoft, long story, was kind of an accident, right? I had my own web company in high school. College, I accidentally went a career fair, wasn't really intending to, ended up interning at Microsoft. And I told myself, okay, that they would give me a full-time offer before my last year. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go there for 2 years and then leave. Ended up staying for 3 years. I wanted to leave at the right point in the cycle, but I just knew, like my friends there, it's the golden handcuffs, right? And, I was there during the Steve Ballmer era. And so whenever Microsoft wasn't doing as great, now it's obviously taken off and it's a whole different kind of company. But, I
Mm.
made the leap and everyone thought I was crazy. And, here I am today. So.
Beautiful. Mine is different. I mean, my early career as a hustler had worked at IHOP, and had my own carpet cleaning business, and it was fun times until I finished school, and then went into full mode career in oil and gas from different kind of departments and countries and cities. So it was a full like typical career ladder, but it was accelerated. So it was fun. It was fun, but it's fun until it's not fun. And so when you start getting into the higher levels and started feeling like this was detached from maybe true value add and people and maybe direct impact, and started wondering what I wanted to do. Should I go do consulting? Should I go do my software company? Maybe something in AI? And then I decided maybe I want to just work with a small team. So what industry can you do much in a small team? And real estate was kind of like that. So that was kind of my initial thought. But I didn't kind of connect my career early on to real estate. It was, let me just build a portfolio of homes and see how it goes. And like Farah said, then you realize it's not scalable, and it's a full-time job, if not more, and you need a lot of homes and a
Yeah,
lot of people, and you're back into the a lot of people game. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. But that's kind of how it
and the thing that
evolved.
drove me nuts about the rental portfolio and houses is you end up having 10 different loans that sometimes get sold to a different lender. So then the lending changes and the portal to go to login changes. And then you end up getting, two tax forms for the same deal. And then you have 10 different insurance policies that all expire differently. And it's just kind of a lot of bureaucracy, which is kind of distracts from the core part of the business. So, and I don't know, is
Yeah.
that your same experience, Al? So.
Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, when you buy homes, you're forced to find good deals, which means you don't control the locations necessarily.
Mhm.
So you ended up with so many different roofs in two different locations. And Houston is a country, for those who are not familiar with Houston. Like from one side to one side without traffic can be an hour and a half. So you don't want to be dealing with 50, 100 homes in all these spots in a major city like Houston. So that was kind of like a turning point as well.
Great. So you're talking about that inciting incident, the beginning moments. I'm curious what you decided to take on yourself early on. Were there certain things that you went, oh, I'm going to have to delegate this quickly, build a small team? Were there skills that you went, oh, I'm going to have to get really good at this really quickly? What were kind of those beginning, that first year or so? What did that look like for you?
All right, I'm gonna go first on this one. Al, you get to go first on the next one. So, I mean, for me, I was lucky. I had a partner, right? And I still have him today, 50-50 partner, great partner, right? And it's been, it's nice to have partners because you growing a business is tough, right? Like there's no business that's easy. I think that's really one of the false things a lot of people think. There's a lot of work that it takes to build up a business and then operate the business and then scale the business and then bring in people and streamline them. I mean, that's a lot of different pieces. And so having a partner makes that so much easier because you can share the workload. You can also share the frustrations, right? I talked to, we have a podcast that we do for M&A, and we talk to some of these business owners, and they're kind of like the lone wolf up top, right? They don't have anyone to vent to, and it's stressful and tough. And so, I had a partner, and one of the things that we were really good at is, I like this, and I don't know if there's a book called Crossing the Chasm, right? And as a company, you start something, right? And you get to the point where you have to kind of make the leap, right? But you cross the chasm. And as a company, there's different chasms along the way based on where you are in that business cycle. And so for us, one of the first chasms was really bringing in an asset manager. And we couldn't afford the asset manager, right? But we knew that if we continued to be the only ones asset managing the property, that it would start to distract us from being able to grow the business. So we brought on a very qualified asset manager early on before we could even afford him, right? Thinking to ourselves, we'll figure out how to afford him later. So that's one, right? And that was one of the early ones. Bringing on an assistant, and you kind of start to do these different leaps. And I mean, we're literally as big as we are today. We just had that this week where we hired on a COO at one of the companies, and I'm just like, man, how are we going to afford this? But we'll grow it and make it happen, right? But it's ultimately about bringing in people that are better than you at each thing, right? That can really think deep about what they are responsible for and to help operationalize and make it better, right? And I think that's the big thing as a business owner. The biggest fallacy most people have is they end up spending all their time working in the business, not on the business, right? And then you end up having a much less, effective business because you're trying to do 20 different things versus bring in kind of the cavalry that is really good at those things. And so that's maybe, the thing for us. And so you constantly have to step back and tell yourself, okay, what is the biggest challenge we have in the next 60, 100, 180 days, and how do we start to get ahead of that? So
Yeah, similar. I mean, to your previous question quickly around like the skills, like because you oversimplify things, you're better than real estate, and real estate is easy, right? So it's all just project management and maybe a little bit of negotiation, no big deal. And then you go into it and you're like, oh my God, this is just like a business, just like anything else. And it's not a turnkey business. It's not a buy and hold business. This is not asset management in a way. This is a true fully operational business. So year one for me was I just wanted to learn like crazy. A new industry for me. So all kinds of conferences, books, podcasts, and started investing as a passive investor in so many deals. And part of this was me learning with my money. So it's making sense to do the right due diligence on the people, on the deals, on learning underwriting, understanding how deals are put together. And that's when the light bulb came in, and we're like, huh, my entire career is relevant to this. I had two startups in GE and I knew how to raise VC money. Great. And SEC says that we can raise money in real estate and it's legal. Awesome. Check. So that was like my first aha moment. The second aha moment was, oh, this is literally an M&A business. And that's like my last 7 years in my career is how to buy a business, how to evaluate a business, how to create a business plan and plan the exit before you even enter the deal. I'm like, interesting. That's funny. I didn't actually plan it that way. So it was kind of the most ironic thing, and it worked out well. But initially, I thought it was project management skills, being disciplined, making sure that you monitor your physical, your P&L well, and running that. But it turned out to be a totally different business. And once I had that, then it clicked that this is not a hustle, this is a business. And this is when I put in the corporate hat again, and we're like, okay, what do I need to do? Well, spend more before you earn. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Because if I don't have assistants, I need to duplicate myself at a minimum to like 3 people. That was the beginning. Is who's going to find the deals, how we're going to find the money, and how am I going to make sure that I run the deals? I'm asset manager, right? So that was the first thing. Like, okay, we have those, and then okay, what else? Now we need to grow our ability to be in front of our investors, and we need to think about how we're going to actually document all of our processes and automate them so we don't rely on individuals, but we rely on a process and a team. And then you start thinking about the culture and all the things that I learned in management of like you need to hire superstars up front and then build a healthy culture up front. Because once you have that established, everything else falls apart, follow that pattern.
Yeah. And maybe just to kind of really simplify it to Al, because I was out at a conference and I really love the way they simplified it. All we do is two things, right? Find deals, find money, find deals, find money. And then once you have those things, you got to obviously operate it. But at its core, that's what the business is about. And so, we've evolved what deals means in us as a company because we have investors that want to diversify other things. But at its core, you have to get really good at doing those three pillars, those three parts.
Yeah.
Definitely. Feras, I think I put Crossing the Chasm in the comments. I think that's the right book. I just want to make sure that's the right
No,
resource.
that is the right one. I literally went and bought the book just now because I always talk about it and I have never read it. And so, but I
Oh
just
my
know
gosh.
I know what it's about, and I
I
literally
didn't
bought it
mean to
while we were
out
on this
you.
call. No, okay, I tend to do that. Anyways, I'm 90% sure that's what the concept is about. So yeah, your link forced me to go buy it. It's
Okay,
$10
great.
and it'll be here tomorrow. So
We're going to do a book club in December, everyone. So Al, you were talking about other resources, podcasts, books, things like that, you found helpful. I think that's a natural segue into that question. Are there certain resources that you found useful for improving the skills you had or gaining new skills? Anything, it is, I think end of the year is a good time to start building that reading list for 2025 and skill building list.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, it was tough for me to come down from a VP and hustle again. That was the first thing. So a lot of the books I read were like, Atomic Habits and the basic like mindset habits, let's start over kind of thing because I really wanted to be in the trenches and stay in the trenches for a while because I didn't want to come as the CEO of this and act like this is a very resourceful business. So that's one. Joe Furless' book, The Best Ever, was a very resourceful book that I enjoyed early on, kind of simplifying the whole process of how to build yourself to become a multifamily investor. That was great. But yeah, I can think of maybe I type a little bit if I think through more, but it was more learn real estate and stay grounded, kind of the theme of what I read. Now I'm going back into my consulting days and reading the top 10 Harvard Business Reviews and things like that because I want to now think about scale and doing other things, but it was just most basic books that keeps people grounded and just keep pushing forward.
and maybe I'll go ahead and answer it too. And the book that really for anyone that is new in real estate doesn't understand the concepts. There's a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I thought it was a great book because it talks about simple concepts, right? How does the couple? And I don't remember the number. I think in the book maybe they make $80,000 a year combined, right? How do they retire millionaires? And it gives you a lot of the foundational principles of why real estate's great, right? We invest for cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, right? And most people that are new to real estate, they don't understand how is it for appreciation and depreciation. Those sound like contradictory things, but they're very different things, right? Then pay down of the note, leverage, right? All of these are different principles, and so I think that's a great book. But my advice to everybody is there's a ton of podcasts out there, right? Go find one you like, pound them down, and then hop in and figure it out. You're gonna make mistakes, and the biggest thing is, I see this way too much. Like I said, I similar to Al, I went to a lot of conferences. We also host a conference, and I swear at our conference and our meetup, like you'll have people that'll come for years and never once go do a deal, right? And my biggest thing is don't be those people, right? It's about getting educated, know enough, but then have confidence in yourself to, you know, make mistakes, but just make sure it's not a mistake that's going to kill you, right? And work through it. You know that you can solve it because challenges will happen. And Al kind of said earlier, real estate's tough, and it is in a lot of ways. And really, we also have a property management company, and I've managed many different companies. We've started many from scratch. We've bought companies. The hardest business in the world, in my mind, is property management. Right? It's very people heavy,
The
both
most
residents and
unappreciated too.
yeah, it's a very tough business, right? But it's important. And then so again, my big advice to everybody is it's not easy, but you're gonna have to have confidence in yourself and hop in and go figure it out. So
Great.
Absolutely. Bigger Pockets was great early on. I think they're out of touch and they just sent an email
yeah, that
to
was the
all
one
their
that I
subscribers saying, yeah, I think we're out of touch and we need to update our stuff. I think they were great when real estate was easier and they continue to operate in the mode of like 2018. And we're like, hello, it's 6 years later. So,
yeah, I was talking with the CEO of Bigger Pockets about a month and a half ago, and I was because similarly I kind of came up that Bigger Pockets world. I mean, that's where I learned a lot, or 8, 9 years ago, right? But it is, I think they have a lot of ambitious plans to kind of get that more mainstream because it used to be amazing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
I mean,
oh,
meet
yeah.
people. I think real estate is is a relationship business.
yeah,
That's like at its core, it's an unfair business, and you need to play to that industry. So connections is everything. Whether it's a mentor, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a potential partner. I mean, when I started going to conferences, I was just like, drinking from fire hose and meeting everybody and asking questions. But
yeah,
ultimately, now we go to conferences to build relationships and do deals together and grow together. So it became a process, even the conferences and meeting people and how to date in real estate. Dating in real
court,
estate is a
court,
real thing.
courting each other. It's not about who you know or what you know. It's about who knows you, right? I really like that phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you were talking about building relationships. You kind of walked right into my next question, which was about building relationships, mentorships. What were some like early connections that you made that you found useful in those first few years?
Um, I guess for me, it's important to be around similar minded people, right? And people that have done what you're looking to do, right? And constantly strive to kind of grow. I mean, so there wasn't really like one specific example I can give, but it's just, we were part of masterminds. We were, pushing ourselves and even crazy things like, hey, whatever, 6 years ago, like, let's go start our own conference, right? And that's been very valuable. So it's about getting yourself in front of other people and building those relationships. And for me, the software company I had after Microsoft, we failed because we did not understand the value of sales and marketing. So I knew with Disrupt, I was not going to make that mistake, right? And really instead double down and be the best at it. And that's been very valuable. And so, I'd say it's just about getting out there, having a good pulse on what the market is doing and finding ways to innovate.
Yeah. I mean, similar thing. I did work with a couple of, mentors. I joined masterminds, I joined programs. They're probably more expensive than they should be, but one or two connections in these groups makes the whole difference. Not about the education or the sponsorship necessarily. Just these are people who are successful and they're doing deals, and you see them and you be like, yep, if they do it, I can do it, and start learning and mingling. And this is how I met Feras, and we started
Yeah.
talking, and we ended up doing deals together. So, I mean, it's how it works. Now, one thing that I'm always cautious of is there's a lot of gurus in this industry, just like any other industry, and there's a lot of false sales and marketing. So I was very adamant about making sure that we come as authentic as possible and we talk to the people and we're not transactional and building those long-term relationships. And after now 3.5 years in real estate, I know my partners. If we're doing multifamily, we're doing in this city, we're working with these two groups. If we're doing development, we're gonna go recruit Uncle Wes, and we ended up doing development in Oklahoma. And so you go back to like your core network after you kind of finish that dating process. But it's an ongoing process. You grow from one segment to another, from one city to another, and you keep building those relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. There's a really good question in the chat about Feras about working with Brandon Turner on a Houston deal. I don't know if you want to share about that if you see the question.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
we've done many deals with him, right? And, he's a friend, and it's kind of an interesting story. So actually, one of those masterminds that I was at, right? There's another person named Brian Murray that was in those masterminds. And I happened to sit next to Brian on a bus ride I think we were going to dinner. And, we got to know each other better. Well, fast forward maybe 6 months later, he reaches out. So again, who knows you, and says, hey, he was partnered with Brandon at the time. They were doing mobile home parks, and that was kind of their focus. And they're like, hey, we want to get into multifamily, right? We're talking to different guys, but we want to partner with someone that has that expertise. And you guys were our first pick. Would you guys be interested? Right. And, got to know them. They flew out, met each other, kind of just spent, a week together, a couple days together. And we ended up also doing a lot of different deals together. And so again, it's about getting out there. That would have never transpired had we not gone to the mastermind, had not been part of, these different places and doing the things to innovate, right? Because again, there's a lot of other guys out there too they could have partnered with, but we had the management company in house. We had a track record in kind of multiple states. We had other things to kind of help us stand out. So
Yeah. Now back to you have to jump in early on. You cannot vet everybody. You cannot vet every deal like the
yeah,
way you think you would. And you just have to, like for the new investors, yeah, you definitely use your gut feel, definitely ask around. Real estate is a small world. Everybody knows everybody ultimately. The real players, let's say, knows everybody. And you can ask and do that research, but ultimately you have to jump into partnerships just like you want to jump into deals. And sometimes they're gonna come, you'll be like, okay, it was a great deal, nice working with you, but we're not doing deals again. And some will be like, hey, let's build on this and do another one and take it from there.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we wrote a LinkedIn article about that. I think you've got one about partnerships and how they're kind of like dating. Gotta gotta test the waters a little bit and then, pare down as time goes on.
Mm.
So, talking about that and, where you're at right now and looking into the future, you've experienced a lot, you've felt a lot of things out, you've grown in different ways. Where do you see yourself scaling in the future? What kind of skills do you think you're going to develop or pick up in other folks? Like what's the path ahead look like?
All right, I'll go first. I mean, for us, we're we're constantly figuring out how do we grow and improve, right, and give our investors more offerings. And we kind of see ourselves more as a platform, right? Investors, and this is I thought this is where Al was going in his previous statement, but he didn't quite say it, which is ultimately you're investing in the jockey, right?
Mm.
Yes, we have investors that'll ask questions about deals, but ultimately they're still trusting our underwriting and our operational expertise to get there, right? Very, very, very few, and I mean the answer is probably like one investors actually understand the underwriting intimately, right? People will ask very superfluous questions, but very few understand the details, and that's where they're trusting us to do that. And so, um, people invest with Disrupt because of us, right? And so it has our stamp. And that's kind of where we're figuring out how do we, continue to expand that and provide more offerings. And what are the things we're good at? We're good at operations. And so management is one of those things, right? We buy a property, the management company is doing the day-to-day operations, but ultimately we're looking at, okay, how do investors diversify? Real estate really is more about wealth preservation than it is about cash flow, right? And that's kind of where we've, expanded the company and starting to give our investors offerings where, hey, we're going to go off and buy a business in an industry, right? We're going to operate it, do the day to day, but it's more about a cash flow play where investors can get that continuous mailbox money. So,
You can see why Firas is our first guest on this webinar series. There's so many similarities to the mindset. One is there's a lot of hunger for real investment. There's a lot of fake investments out there. And you either give your money to someone and say, hey, so and so, Charles Schwab, whatever, I don't want to mention, like, hey, do this for me and charge me all the fees you want to charge me. And oops, there's no accountability to any, gains or losses. And people want to do real estate, but it's intimidating. And they hear all the horror stories, and they're like, what do you mean? Like we're gonna like do evictions and chase rent and maintenance. But real estate, like that's how people get rich, right? And people want to do real estate. And then like, can we actually invest in oil and gas? Like, is this a thing? Or can we invest actually in a company, maybe with a higher risk, but like this is our industry and we love to be part of a medical device, investment or like, so I feel like real estate is an anchor and multifamily is an anchor within real estate. And that will continue to be the bread and butter of what we do. But we're already expanding into other real estate asset classes, industrial, medical offices, and senior kind of specialize within multifamily. But we're now looking into oil and gas. We're looking into startups. We're looking on growth opportunities of businesses, everyday businesses, right? So we're back to M&A. It's kind of like full loop. You're back to M&A.
Great.
Mergers and acquisitions for the people who are wondering what M&A is.
Great. Yeah. So for people who are starting out or maybe thinking about going into real estate, making the jump or dipping their toe in, what kind of advice do you have? Are there things that you would have done differently, if you had it to do all over again? Are there mistakes you would have fixed, or do you think, it was all part of the journey? What kind of gems can you provide everybody?
Oh, to me, I mean, you're just going to make a lot of mistakes and have the confidence that you work through them, right? But make sure to take action. I mean, you hear that a lot, but I see inaction all the time in real estate. And the other thing too to tell people is like real estate is cyclical. You have to recognize that, and you're not going to know where bottom is. You're not going to know where top is, right? It's about doing a deal and structuring it in a way to help kind of protect you in both scenarios, right? We sold a lot of deals in 21. Yeah, if we would have held on for another 6 months, we could have made another 20%, 30% for our investors, right? Did it feel like, hey, we should have held on? Everybody, yeah, we could have held on. But if we would have held on another 6 months after that, we would have lost money. We would have not lost money. We would have made less than where we exited, right? So it's about taking action and moving forward, but structuring your opportunities to give you flexibility, right? And just, you're not going to know where peak is. You're not going to know where bottom is. And everybody wants to know. And everybody's like, oh, right now the market is going down. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And they've said that for 5 years, right? And then they went up almost every one of those years. And so it's about getting into good quality deals and structuring them accordingly. So
Yeah, if you think about it as a clock or maybe the year, right? You want to invest in April, May before the summer because you're never gonna hit the peak. And if you want to divest, you want to divest in October, November. So you have to have that mindset as like the winter is coming, like take action. The summer is coming, take action, but we don't know when is it gonna be. Like nobody saw COVID coming, and nobody saw the fiscal policy and the total, money printing frenzy and then like punishing everybody for the fiscal policy that they created. So like there was a lot of good operators who got caught. And this is, you hear a lot of people like, oh, we didn't make money in the last 3 years and all that, but that's because, that things were unprecedented and people are going to make mistakes. The people who are communicative about the problem and how we're dealing with it and how they're coming up with solution and how they're talking to partners, talking to the bank, talking to insurance, talking to, reviewing, looking at every angle of operations and preserving capital and cash. And I mean, those are what you should do in any business. But ultimately, you have to trust the process and keep going. And that's why most of our deals are 3 to 5, sometimes 6 years cycles. So whatever happens in the economy, just hold your breath, stay the course, and we'll see the other side.
Yeah, I like what Wes said in the chat. Everyone will get a haircut in their life, but shouldn't stop venturing. That's
Yeah,
good.
you should keep going to the barber shop, right?
And go to
Keep
the
going.
barber shop and talk about books. That's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
Marquise just did. You know, it's funny because I've been saying similar things to my students. I'm a TA and they're working on this year-long project and they're really scared of failure. And I said, well, I would rather you make an effort and document some things that didn't work so well than play small or not take any actions and then come back and say, well, we did this small thing and kind of did a little something, you know, so just interesting because I just had that conversation with them this week. Great. I mean, I don't have a ton of other questions. I'd love to open up the chat and see if anybody else has any questions. You can unmute, you can put them in the chat. Marquise, do you have anything? I know you've always got questions and stories.
No, I mean, thanks so much, Sammy. And I mean, for myself, I was taking notes and writing things down, just gleaning from the wisdom that you all have, because y'all have been in the business and you've been in business, right? This isn't your first rodeo. You all are there, you're in the thick of it, you're on the ground level with real estate, but then you're also seeing things from a different vantage point. And so, for both of you all to just be here and to share your story and present your true self. That means a lot, I know, for myself, and I'd imagine for other people here. So just thank you for being you.
You bet, man. And I think, investors recognize that too. Maybe that's one thing we didn't talk about. It's also investors can smell BS, right? And, it's not about a hard sell, right? It's about, hey, here's an opportunity, walk them through it, both the risks and the upside, and, let them make that decision. Because last thing you want to do is hard sell an investor that gets into a deal that they're not really comfortable with, and then they feel like, that you betrayed them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main things is that what can go wrong? Here are the risks. Make sure you understand what you're getting into. This is real estate. We hold the money for longer, which is good sometimes because you're not one click away from selling your stocks at the wrong time. So we eliminate that factor, but still, it's about trust and it's about making sure that everything is on the table and
Yeah.
upfront.
And I'll give a quick story too. I mean, I like to say one of my biggest personal investments, because I invest in every one of our deals, and one of my biggest investments ended up being in our worst deal, right? Or one of our worst deals. It was a grind of a deal. It ended up being why we created our management company, and we ended up rescuing the deal, and we made a pretty good exit, right? But it was, you would think that I would know how to pick the best deal of them all, and you don't really know, right? Even as the owner, you have, there's characteristics about each deal, right? They kind of give them their own merits, but I don't even know, right? And so again, investors have to be comfortable with, hey, here's the investment, here's what it looks like, and you hop in and figure it out. And the story I like to kind of tie it all together. Our CFO, who's now our CFO, she was just one of our investors, very well respected, invested in many deals, CPA, super tax wizard. She was invested in that deal and she ended up coming to work for us. So, it ended up working out in the end, right? But you just don't know. And so that's where you want investors to be comfortable with the opportunity and not do it just because you push them into it. So.
Absolutely. We have a hand raised. Mustafa,
Yes,
go ahead.
I finally found that button.
you
It was
got it.
hidden somewhere. Appreciate you, Sammy.
So
Thank you
you're
so
you're a
much.
Zoom expert now.
Yes, thank you, Sammy. Always coming in for the save.
No
Uh, I do
worries.
have I do have just two questions for property management. That usually translates into my head as kind of managing requests and managing tenants and whatever they want, and sending someone in the apartment, and so that's one side of it. And the other side of it is if you're going down that route of renewable energy and trying to get like a BMS, like building management system, and getting information out of the property itself, and just making sure that you're running as lean as possible, or having the best windows, or whatever, what have you. Is that part of the property kind of management that you're dealing with when you're explaining your story for us, or no? That's question one. And question two was for the investment, when you're trying to kind of get something or pay something up front and you're just waiting for the dividends, hiring a CTO or investing in something or doing it. you kind of also have to be a little bit calculated so that this risk isn't really going, that just doesn't go out the drains, you know? Is there a formula that you usually go for, or is it just like a guts formula that you're going after?
Okay, good question. So to answer the first one, I mean, property management is all the day-to-day operation, right? We're talking about larger apartment complexes, the 100 units being the smallest, and we have a deal that's 530 units, right? And so with each of those, you're having 5, 10 people full-time at the property. And so property management is really leasing units, servicing the units, right? Maintenance requests, turning units between tenants, right? It's providing, property activities. It's handling, getting vendors paid from the grass to pool cleaning to all of these things, right? A lot of money comes in property management, and a lot of money goes out in property management. And so it's really the operational side of what it takes to support an apartment complex. So that's what we call as property management. Like, there's a property management company that manages one or many assets, and each asset is its own team of people. So hopefully that kind of explains what property management is. Now, the second question was, sorry, go ahead.
One thing to that point for us, because when you're saying like systems and making sure that it's tech enough from bringing the new tech, you still have one major stakeholder, which is the tenants themselves, right? That's
Yep.
part of your stakeholders. And if they are not even remotely tech savvy, or they're not even interested in entertaining your software or tech or whatever kind of elevation in the real estate ecosystem that you're bringing in, that system might just fail because of the lack of utilization, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like rolling out anything with any business, right? You need to explain the value prop, you need to properly train the people, give them the incentives, and roll it out effectively. And so a lot of what I was talking about, systems and operation, I'm actually talking about the back end operations, like what it takes for the back end office. And I can force the back end operations to change a lot more easily than I can the on-site experience. Now, that said, very simply, 10 years ago, most people used to pay their rent via money order. Today, most people pay their rent via online ACH. And so residents will adapt. It's about, is there a value prop for whatever it is you're trying to roll out?
Yeah, please hold your thought on the second question, but I wanted to add there's a lot of introduction to technology and systems in the past few years. So the dinosaur nature of this has changed because the need of optimization, and if there was any waste in the industry, we don't have any waste now, and we have to be fully tuned all the time. And multifamily is a day by day operation. You cannot miss a beat, whether it's a collection, AR, all the AR stuff, and making sure that you study the behavior of how tenants pay their rent. There's a lot of AI now and texting messages and when to send the text and A/B tested messages of what to send and kind of like push the people to pay faster than they should have. For example, there's a lot of, so on the AR side, on the maintenance requests, predicting maintenance requests and distributing the load of maintenance operators. So there's some more technology that we haven't seen, even on the leasing side, chat GPT, fake leasing assist, virtual leasing assistants answering questions, especially after hours, and guiding them to actually fill a full leasing application on the spot so we don't lose them. It's that like first 5 minute interaction that is enabled by software. So we started to see some adoption of technology, but you have to think of this industry as class B and class C. This is your 1980s, 1990s property. So we don't have a lot of tech in the buildings itself. We're not like the Dubai towers or those kind of class A buildings. But nevertheless, over the years, there were a lot of tools that helped us optimize the teams internally, but start to interact with the tenants in a more meaningful way. Now, second question, Mustafa, before we lose it.
Yes.
It was about how do you underwrite,
Feras.
essentially. And so the answer to that, Mustafa, it's a lot more complex than I think maybe your kind of question leads it to, right? There's a lot of things to factor in. I mean, rent and expenses is very easy, right? People can understand that. How much am I charging? How many units do I have? How many people I expect to pay? How many expect I don't pay, right? And what are all my expenses and what can I do to optimize those? But then you have to layer in other factors, right? And really the biggest factor is understanding what your capital structure is, right? How much debt service do I have? Obviously, the bigger loan you have, it means the smaller amount of equity you need to bring. But then the bigger the loan you have, the more likely you are to not be able to service that loan, right? And so you have to play that spectrum and understand, even within the loan, what kind of loan do you have? Is it floating rate? Is it fixed? What are all the penalties associated with it? And so, we have a pretty complex model that we've refined over years, right? That accounts for all these different scenarios. And that's where a lot of what we're doing on the front end is financial engineering, right? And structuring the things effectively where we feel comfortable with the risk exposure, right? Because there's risk in any investment, and it's about how much risk is there, right? And to give you an example, right, outside of Fannie and Freddie, which is some of the best multifamily debt, the next really tranche of good quality debt is usually what we call life cos, right? Life insurance companies. They will give you great interest rate, but they're only going to do it at 50, 55% leverage, right? Now, again, it's great for them, great for us in the sense that for them, it's very low risk, right? Worst case scenario, the deal has to lose half of its value for them to lose money. And then for us, it's more equity to bring. But guess what? My note payment might be 70% less than somebody that is going to go and do an 85% leverage loan. And so it's low risk for the investors. Now, that said, right, the capital stack, different people, require different returns. Debt is cheap money. Right today, I mean, we coincidentally we closed the deal today. Actually, right, we closed it at 5.41% interest rate. That's what debt is today on a pretty, even though the 10-year went up. Long story, a deal, right? My investors will not accept the 5.4% return, right? They need more than that. It's not a great investment for investors, and so if you kind of do the math, it's better for me to take on more debt. Mathematically, it is best for me to take on a 99% leverage loan with 1% equity, right? Because the loan is cheap money and all of that extra upside will go to the investors. But it's very risky, right? Can I service that? I mean, what happens if we have soft rents, the market goes backwards, right? We have a fire. All these things start to create problems. And so you're constantly assessing the risk of the deal and the investment. So
Yeah, this is brilliant. As you were saying, financial engineering and all that, this was all in my mind. So we run a lot of sensitivity analysis, Mustafa, on rent, on growth, on vacancy, even the black swan events after COVID. We started to learn how to say, okay, where's my break even and how we're gonna survive if this happens, and so a lot of sensitivity analysis up front and understanding the risk tolerance of the team and your pool of investors. Doctors are different than, small business owners and like high paying job careers versus maybe somebody who's investing the first time, etc. So you have to understand your crowd too and explain to them the risks taken and how you're mitigating these risks, the assumptions you're making as well. Now, when it comes to how you're developing your business internally, there's project-based accounting, which is a little bit more straightforward of this is how many doors, and we have the formulas of how many people we should hire and how much OpEx ratio should be, and we mastered these over the years. City over city are different, and even class over class are different. So we have those rules of thumbs, if you will. But when it comes to internally as the business of Investream, for example, I know it's big talk, but it's sales on operation planning. It's what are we going to do next year? How many deals we should close and work backward. So we're going to bet on next year and we're going to start staffing properly to grow into next year. And that's how we look into the resources. Now, that's a risky proposal if you don't hit your quota, your target, if the numbers don't end up what you thought they would be. We may say, hey, we want to do multifamily acquisitions, and we end up doing light industrial development. And so you have to pivot. But as long as you have that sales and operation plan for next year and you take the bets against what you really want to do.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very, very helpful. Thank you, guys.
Sure. We
Great.
have a question from Cash. I don't want to miss.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest values one can bring to you, your teams? Oh, more deals, more money. I want to simplify it. We don't know what we don't know. You know, when I brought in Uncle Wes, he's a development guru. Well, 80% of what we do now is development. So that opened doors for us, right? Um, transferable skills, if you want to translate it into corporate, if you're good with project management, time management, understanding how to create a budget and follow through, setting goals and meeting those. I mean, there's a lot of soft skills that benefits you in any industry. So I don't know if real estate is a unique opportunity. If you're good with people and you like to meet people and build relationships, I'm looking for BD people all the time, right? But they need to be authentic. They need to understand the industry. They need to be full time. That's one thing. You need to be full time. Now, if you're part time and you still have a corporate, you may find, you may find money, you may find deals if you have connections with brokers and things like that. So, if you're able to leverage your skills to ultimately bring money or deals, you're gonna be in the game.
Dialing this back a little bit, you may have covered it. I was driving earlier, but I'm in the corporate world today. Al, we talked about this a little bit. And we've got a couple of rental properties and my first passive investment with Investream. Really wanted to maybe share your experiences of when do you find that right time to jump ship? What are some things to really look at or to assess before making that jump? In my mind today, and I think I've shared this with you, Al, is really trying to supplement my current income through investments, over the years. But I just feel like it's really slow, and I don't want to make that mistake either. Maybe if your experiences or something you've shared earlier today, where do you find that balance? And I hope that's appropriate for this call.
Yeah.
We should turn off recording now because this advice can be dangerous. Go ahead, Feras.
I was gonna say, people always ask that, when should I hop ship? And I think the first question is, what are you looking to do, right? Like me and Al, we're on the active side. We're not on the passive side. Your passive investments, you need a lot of passive investments to get to the point where you are, fully able to make the leap. And so that's if you're going to be passive. If your question is, hey, I want to get more on the active side, it's about understanding your role, finding partners, and how much can you contribute, right? There's a lot that goes into a deal. Finding the deal is one part of it. Getting the deal together, raising the equity, operating the deal, managing the construction, if there's a construction component, the list goes on and on and on, right? There's probably 8 different things that it takes to get a deal done and performing. And so it's about, can you do 6 of those things? Can you do all 8? Can you do one of those, right? Each of those results in different amount of upside. And so the biggest thing I tell people though is like, don't hop, I tell people move quickly, but take action, but don't cut off the mothership immediately, right? There's some people that'll go all in, and I think that's just silly. Instead, my advice is milk it as long as you can, right? If you could do both duties well, do them as long as you can until you have a clear path, right? Abdul, if you're not seeing that path right now, the answer is not now, right? If you start to see a pathway to get there, then it starts to make sense, right? Because things happen in real estate. I mean, the market, rates may go to 8 next year, right? That's a bigger problem altogether, but I promise you're not going to be buying deals, right? And so why take on that risk?
Yeah, yeah. And for anything to be real, you have to invest time or money in it. And for you to get to that reality, you have to immerse yourself. And so mine was, I'm gonna invest passively in other people's deals. I'm gonna see the good, I'm gonna see the bad, and I'm gonna see the ugly. And I'm gonna be like, oh, now I understand how to run or how to communicate or how to package or how to assess. And be like, but I actually invested my money, so that lesson is going to be imprinted in my heart. But so that's one. The second is, do you really want to be active? Like that's a bigger question. Like, do you really want to change industry? It's almost like if you've been in corporate for 15 years in tech and you decided to like go to automotive. I'm like, why are you going to automotive? Like, what's going on? So I would answer it the same way. Like when you want to change industries in a career, is it worth the risk? And when is it the right time to do it? So I'm sorry, sometimes that makes it harder on you, but like that's the reality of it.
It's a question that's just been hovering around for a while, and the more I hear back, the better it is for me to make that decision here soon enough. But I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you for the questions.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
All right, final call. We'll wrap it up here. Any final questions?
I can share a final story if you want me to.
Yeah. Bring it home.
All right. Perfect. Here we go. I'm on the spot, but I'm ready. So the other thing that happened today, if you joined earlier in the call, you know that I went to the barbershop. Thank you for the edge up and the fresh fade. I am from Houston. The other thing that happened today is that as I was driving home, I was listening to an artist, a music artist named J. Cole. He's a great lyricist, great work. But one of the things he said is, there is no such thing as a life that's better than yours. And so, as we go into the season here for Thanksgiving, and we're surrounded by family and friends, it's easy to compare where we are today to where others are. It's easy to compare where we are today into somebody's past, somebody's present. But at the end of it all, there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours, because you're living the only life that truly matters for yourself, because it's your life. And every day you have a choice to build it into the life that you want and desire it to be, to make an impact for other people, to make an impact for your faith, to make an impact for your family. But however you have your time and your resources allocated, just remember there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Well said. Don't try to be what Alan Feras did. Everybody forged their way into something, and be yourself into it, and discover and grow.
Awesome. Yeah, that was the perfect cap. So thanks everyone for being here and all the great questions and all the great feedback and everything, and Marquise for the stories and everyone for the generosity of their time. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Feras, for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
No problem. Thanks
Thanks
everyone.
everyone. Have a great night.
Have a good night all.